Troy McGuire, and I'm founder and president of Mental Health Television Network.
What inspired you to create Mental Health Television Network?
It's a little bit personal and a little bit professional, and I can start with personal first. And my grandmother, who was pretty much my primary babysitter when I was 6 or 7, had schizophrenia, and she literally would talk to ghosts. And as a child, it used to scare the crap out of me, of course. There was one incident where she actually called the police because she needed to go back to the psychiatric hospital. But before she did that, she went to the store and bought my favorite toy. And so I dealt with that for many years. And again, her ghosts it was really like they weren't a threat to me, even though she would talk all the time that the ghosts were talking to her. They were really, it was almost like having a bad best friend where they would just constantly put her down, and she was on medication, and there was times where she got better, but back then especially I think being a woman too, because my grandfather institutionalized her because she was a pain in the butt for that. So it just, there was a lot of strikes against her. And, what I take from that, and again, she ended up killing herself several years later. But she never had any hope. And that's what makes me the saddest. Like she spent her entire life, and I actually write about this on our site. When in her 20s, she was like in this roller skating show, so happy, and then she got diagnosed, and then she didn't get the right kind of treatment and the right kind of people around her, and the right kind of love around her. Um, she just never had any hope for the rest of her life. So, and again, I constantly for years wanted to help my grandmother get better, and she never did. So that's my own personal experience, with mental illness. And then this is going to, sound tragic too, which it is. But my father also killed himself, suicide. But I never knew him. But still, I come later on. Obviously, I did not have the opportunity for any of that stuff because of that. So I'm again, this is getting really deep really fast. For years, I was like, okay, do I have the suicide gene? And even though, career was great, kids, everything's great, but there's always that feeling that you just don't know because of, mental illness is, again, there's so much that we don't know about mental illness. And so you take all of that personal side, and then my career, much like yourself, I started as a journalist. I was in local news for a long time, and covered, uh, a lot of stories and a lot of bad stories, and a lot of good stories, and then I kind of switched into syndicated programming and did a entertainment show, and I actually launched a show for a couple of years called Emotional Mojo, which was about it was my kind of my first foray to mental health. And there's a lot of the stuff that you see on our network that I first started there. That ended. But, again, I started thinking, hey, this could be something. And then, in all honesty, OTT happened, over the top streaming. And I started thinking, this could be something. Um, and then COVID happened, and all of a sudden, mental health became cool, right? So there became an appetite for mental health. There's the streaming aspects that just like you do your podcast, made it easier to
Yeah.
create this kind of stuff. And I said the time is right. And what's awesome is we're still a startup. We had some awesome initial investors and who believe in this, who have some of their own experience in mental health, and really I think it's also, again, not to make this too long of an answer, but the Gen Zs, the Gen Ys, they're much more open, and they're
Yeah.
much, they want mental health. They understand it. There's a lot of that's why I have hope for the future, because I think that the kids these days, I think there's a lot of stuff they understand that we didn't understand as kids or even as adults. So long answer for but that's how we got to this space.
I know for me, I live with bipolar disorder too, and I didn't get diagnosed till only 5 years ago. And just being in TV, it's such a stressful environment, and especially bringing in mental health. What was your mental health journey like being in TV for such a long time?
You know, that's a very good question. I think it was I was always in the flight or fight
Yeah.
stage, and in TV, just being in TV news, it manifests that, right? And I think I was in the perfect field for myself, um, because I probably, I have not been diagnosed, but I'm pretty sure I have ADHD. I like the constant motion of television news, the breaking news aspects, but I didn't really spend a lot of time thinking about mental health, in about my own, how healthy I was. I thought I, you go, it's all about the career, and again, then you have a family, and but all this stuff, like with my grandmother, and I went to church in the Crystal Cathedral. I don't know if you know the Hour of Power and Robert Schuller, but it was the power of hope, basically. So and my dad, my stepfather, who I loved, was a salesperson, so he was very upbeat. Like the world could be ending. It's like, oh, don't worry about it. We're gonna, everything will be fine. So I think I got all this. I always call it the soup. It's all of our soup is
Yeah.
what goes into our soup, and and at the end of the day, it's still how we behave, how we take in information, how we interpret, people, that is so important. And one of the things that I really believe in with the mental health with MHTN is that, I call them life moments. And for most of us, I mean, like if you have bipolar, I mean, there's a certain part, there's a lot of the population that is undiagnosed, right,
Yeah.
with certain mental health issues that they probably should address. And then there's another part of the population that just gets overwhelmed with life moments. And I always think, going back to my own life, like if I would have acted differently, or if I would have taken a mental health lens to that situation, things would have been much better for me. Things I said would have been much
Right.
better. How I felt would have been much better. And that's what we're trying to do is really for the viewers and the consumers. It's like we want you to watch it and then be able to use those mental health skills, to interpret that situation, and do it better and feel better about yourself, and how you're handling it. Because again, being a parent, being a boss, being, several, we all have different roles, and we all wish that we could act better in a lot of situations. I do think, and I do think a lot of that is your mental health and your
Yeah.
soup, and then how you interpret those things.
And then before the interview, I was watching a lot of your channel, and congrats, by the way.
Thank you.
And besides the high production value, you are talking about things that actually matter and help people out. Can you tell me about the network?
Yeah, so it's really, again, I was coming from news. I do think that topical mental health news, there's a need for that.
Yeah.
And there again, we take headlines and we credit, from a lot of great, sci posts, Psychology Today, obviously. There's a lot of great journalism being done in the mental health field. What we're trying to do is, it's really a couple parts. There's topical headlines that we cover. So it's the studies, it's the research being done in the mental health field, and then, it's also the the treatments that are being used, that again don't get mainstream media,
Yeah.
deep dives, right? So it's therapists that are talking about how they treat depression, how they treat anxiety, bipolar, schizophrenia. So we're planning, our May coverage, since it's Mental Health Awareness Month for May, really globally, and we're just really every day is a specific, mental health area that we're addressing, including policy, which we can talk about later. Um, but it's really, we're trying to be, since we're going to be on OTT streaming platforms around the world, you have to be topical because people, want to know what's being done.
Yeah.
And then, we also have celebrity stuff in there, as you see. Um, there's a lot of celebrities, and I think in a very healthy, good way that have taken on the mental health
Yeah.
cause, and they're much more open. And again, the more that everyone talks about it, especially celebrities, which people we know gravitate towards, the more we're going to break that stigma of mental health, and where it should, everyone should be able to talk about it without feeling like there's a stigma around it or ashamed or anything else. Or there again, our mantra is, at the end of the day, we don't want you to feel like you're alone, no matter what you're feeling. And that's what we're trying to do is bring people closer to mental health solutions where they're not going to feel alone and they do have hope and realize there's help out there.
I like what you said earlier about Gen Z are being more open. Do you see the stigma of just talking about mental health lessening?
I think I think it's a generational thing, to be honest. I think the baby boomers, which again are one of the greatest generations. They had wars that we never had to worry about, but they, everything swept under the rug.
Yeah.
At least from my grandparents' perspective, I think Gen Xers, which that's where I fall into, a little bit better, uh, and and they were more almost likely to get their own children help versus themselves, right? But I think the younger generation, again, whether it's climate change, whether it's mental health, there's a certain there's just a certain openness about them that, and I don't, and I, we were helicopter parents, so I'm not quite sure where it comes from or how they got this awesome trait. But I do think that whether it's, the good part, maybe social media about the openness, but maybe there's just something about it. But there's so many young people that are kind of leading the charge, and that's our thing. Like we're trying to figure out how to be cooler to them, right? Because we're the story that we do on the news, how we do our product right now and tell that story. It's great for news and it's great for, but that's not the same social media story. We need to how we're going to reach the Y's and Z's. So behind me, I have a much younger people, much cooler than I am, to try and figure out how do we put mental health in this social media box that where my kids are going to want to watch it.
How does it feel for you to be using TV for good?
Oh, it's again, I want to die with, hey, Troy helped create Mental Health Television Network. I mean, that's I want my kids to be proud of me. I mean, there's so many levels of that. But for me, like I hate interviews. I hate public speaking. It's just never been my thing. Like I like behind the scenes. But when I was writing about my grandmother, I was like, oh, like this is the craziest thing you've ever done, like to kind of come out with this kind of stuff. But then I said, you're such a hypocrite. I mean, if you can't write about your own experiences, and
Yeah.
then you're asking other people to talk about theirs on television, like what that does, that doesn't jive. So I had to change my mindset about this because, again, I'm older and I think and I've been through therapy. I've had situations where I need a therapist, and it's been awesome. I mean, that's why I'm a full believer in all that. And but I just think there's a lot of work to be done. But yeah, I'm so proud of this, and I can't wait for other people to see it.
What do you do to help your own mental health?
I run. I do a
Do,
lot of running, meditation. My partner, she's very into holistic. She's very into meditation. So I'm on a regiment. So I'm much healthier now than I was when I was a kid.
when did you fall in love with doing media?
I was always a nerd on the media side. So I wrote for my junior high newspaper. I was editor in chief of my high school newspaper. Got into journalism in college. I really got my first television job when I was 21. I literally knocked on a door of a TV station and said, "Can I intern?" And then I was a producer behind the scenes and it just started, like, again, much like you just got to work your way up and
Right.
moved to a lot of small towns. and then big towns, and then found a way to branch off and do this.
Yeah, where do you want to see this in the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, I mean, I'd love to see this global. I'd love
Yeah.
to see this in multiple languages. Um, we're about to announce a UK deal that so I think we're already heading down that path. But again, we have a big plan, and it all looks good on paper. Um, but I really, again, it's at the core of it. It's just about s- getting everyone that wants to be a part of the mental, like yourself, like we want you on our network, right? We're going to return the favor. Um, you know, we,
Thank you.
yeah, no, we want the voices. There's so many voices out there, and then again that don't get the big media play,
Right.
and we want to be that mouthpiece for those people. And I think as we become a brand that's, that was our biggest challenge. Like when we started, not challenge, but that was our biggest mantra, is that when we launched, even the soft launch that we're doing now, it's like we have to be legit. Like we
Yeah.
can't, we have to show the medical community, my partner's a psychiatrist. We had to show, those types of people that, hey, we're legit. We're talking about legit things. We're not just hey, here's the 5 things that are going to make you, want to wake up in the morning type stuff. We need to be, we need to do stuff a little bit more in depth. So we have, these in-depth interviews, and then we have the short form stuff. But you know, we are, legitimacy and making sure we're accurate. I mean, all that J school stuff is very important to us.
Yeah.
In addition to getting people into our tent that, hey, this is a place where you can talk about mental health. This is a place for solutions, and this is a place where you can come and find solutions to feel better.
Well, I like on your screen too. You have a QR code with, prevention, phone numbers, and all that. How important is it to also be a support system for people?
Oh, yeah, I think it's huge. I mean, I think this is why, when we are pitching now cable operators and OTT platforms, it's like, hey, there's nothing out there like us right
Yeah.
now, right? This is the place, and that QR code is only going to get better. We're talking about videos, we're talking about working with some other companies for help, for support. But I, I think that being a 24/7, which will eventually have, my goal is at 24/7 of programming live, that that we want to be a very big resource. And that's why we're not competitors to like Talkspace, or, we want to promote those
Yeah.
different types of therapy, because I don't believe that there's just one type of therapy that works. I
I
think
agree.
what some of these companies, these startups have done in the mental health space has been amazing. And again, as more people download an app, as more people watch us, it just gets easier to talk about this stuff, whether you're 18 years old or whether you're 70.
I know for me, telehealth changed my life with
Oh.
therapy.
No, I think again, a lot of bad stuff happened with COVID, but I think that is one of the most amazing things that came out of COVID. Again, that was happening before COVID, but
Right.
that really set the tone, right, for that. And again, it's like there's some there's some things in your life where you need ongoing support to make sure. And again, we call it, you should be able to go to a therapist like you go to the doctor, just for a checkup,
Yeah.
right? So that's a kind of what we're trying to push. And there's other situations where it's just really, I call them life moments, right? Where something unexpectedly happens. Could be a death in the family, could be a relationship breakup, but you're really just kind of messed up from that situation, and you need to talk to somebody about it. That is that's and that's where telehealth is that's a huge thing. To just be able to put your credit card down and talk to someone for a half hour. I think that's a very important piece of this puzzle.
How has the network helped your own healing process?
Again, I think just to get it launched, and to have it see it come to life. And um, it's been very, very rewarding. And again, I I'm always a work in progress, right? So I think we all are. But what's cool is to be at a place where every day you're being bombarded with mental health, practices, right?
Yeah.
So every day you're watching something. It's like, oh, like every day I'm surprised. Like every day there's a takeaway, even though I'm watching it for 5 hours a day. I'm like, okay, I need to do that, and that's very rewarding. So, I don't expect everyone to have enough time to watch this for 4 or 5 hours a day, but I would hope that if you're tuning in for 10 minutes, you're picking up something that say, oh yeah, I could use that in my life.
How can people reach out and learn more?
Obviously, MHTN.org is our website, and then we also have numbers on our website that you can, if you have a story idea or if you have a situation, you can call us or email us. But go to mhtn.org, and again, we'd love for feedback too. We'd love to, this is a work in progress. As we're launching this network, and we, again, the more two-way conversation we can have with viewers and experts, media experts, we love all the input.